In every sport, there's a moment when the celebration ends and the truth begins to surface. For mixed martial arts, that moment came not under the bright lights of a championship bout, but in the shadows of a quiet November night. What began as an ordinary UFC fight night would unravel into one of the biggest integrity crises the sport has ever seen. This is not just a story about one fighter or one fight. It's a story about money, pressure, and the dangerous line where desperation meets temptation. Because when the bet started moving faster than the punches, the entire fight game changed forever. The betting scandal that exposed everything. If the Paramount deal was mixed martial arts champagne moment,
Paramount Plus will be the new exclusive home for the UFC.
That glittering celebration of billion-dollar legitimacy and mainstream acceptance, then what unfolded on November 2nd, 2025 at UFC Fight Night 263 was its brutal, sobering hangover. Because that night in Las Vegas wasn't supposed to be special. It was meant to be another routine event in the fight capital of the world. Bright lights, walkouts, gloves touching, and another evening of violence packaged for pay-per-view. But beneath that glossy surface, the sport's darkest undercurrents were about to surge to the top. Something was brewing, something that would shake the foundations of trust inside the UFC. At the center of it all was a 28-year-old featherweight from Ohio named Isaac Dogarian. Fans called him the Midwest Choppa, a nickname earned from his chainsaw-like finishes and relentless aggression. He was young, undefeated, and seen as one of the new faces of the UFC's next generation. But by the end of that night, Dogarian's name would no longer stand for promise. It would stand for scandal. He was booked for a mid-card bout against Yadier Del Valle, a tough Puerto Rican journeyman with a modest 2-fight win streak. On paper, it was supposed to be a tune-up fight, an easy showcase, the kind of matchup designed to build momentum. The odds makers had Dogarian as a comfortable favorite at minus 250. The fans expected fireworks. His team expected another bonus. But the betting markets, they saw something else. Because around 1 p.m. on fight day, the UFC's integrity monitoring partner, a company called IC360, sent an alert. It wasn't a minor blip. It was a flare. Somewhere in the online sportsbooks, betting patterns were shifting in a way that didn't make sense. Heavy money, sharp money, was suddenly pouring in on Del Valle. Not casual bets from fans chasing long shots. This was large, calculated, and specific. The odds that had Dogarian cruising as a clear favorite suddenly started tightening, fast. Within hours, his line dropped from negative 250 to negative 130. IC360 flagged it immediately as unusual activity, and this wasn't the kind of warning that gets ignored. Because when millions of dollars move in one direction, the sport listens. Dana White himself would later recall that moment, how his phone rang, how his gut tightened, how something didn't feel right.
Probably about 1 o'clock that day, we're with a company called IC360, and they are the best bet monitoring company in the business. And they reached out to us and they told us that there was some unusual action going on with that fight. Do we know anything? We didn't.
By 1 p.m. Eastern Time on fight day, anomalies started rippling through the betting markets. Those odds that had Dogarian as a heavy favorite suddenly tightened to minus 130 amid a flood of what's called sharp money on Del Valle. We're not talking about casual bettors putting down a few $100. No, this was serious action. The kind that includes suspicious round one props that IC360 immediately flagged as weird. Dana White, ever the hands-on operator, sprang into action. When the unusual betting activity was detected, White personally intervened.
What we did was we called the fighter and his lawyer and said, what's going on? There's some weird action going on in your bet, weird betting action going on in your fight. Are you injured? Do you owe anybody money? Has anybody approached you to, and the kid said, no, absolutely not. I'm going to kill this guy. And, so we said, okay. The fight plays out, and first round finish by rear naked choke.
So the fight went ahead. The bell rang at 8 p.m., and what happened next would become the subject of intense scrutiny. Dogarian tapped to a guillotine choke at 3:41 of the first round. A finish that, when you really break it down and watch the tape, looks inexplicably passive for a fighter of his caliber. His corner's frantic audio captured on the broadcast with coach Mark Montoya's voice cutting through the arena, noise shouting, "Fight through it." That audio would later be dissected frame by frame by MMA analysts. And when an MMA analyst broke down the actual grappling sequence, the technical details became even more damning.
As soon as Yater lets go of the gable grip, and now there is nothing stopping Isaac from pulling that hand down. Look at what he does. His hand literally lifts off of the choking arm. He went from trying to grab it to now that that arm is free and able to pull down, his hand literally gets lifted up.
The fallout was instant and brutal. Within hours, the story wasn't just about a suspicious fight. It was about a system unraveling in real time. Sportsbooks like DraftKings and FanDuel did something almost unheard of. They pulled betting props mid-event and refunded more than $5 million in wages before sunrise. That's the nuclear option, the kind of move reserved only for moments when the integrity of an entire sport hangs in the balance. The Nevada State Athletic Commission froze Dolgarian's $30,000 purse and called for a November 15th hearing, a meeting that could end with his suspension, maybe even the end of his career. But the UFC didn't wait that long. By November 3rd, just one day later, Isaac Dolgarian was cut. No official ruling, no public defense, just gone. But the real aftershock didn't come from the regulators or the promotion. It came from inside the locker rooms, from the fighters themselves. Within hours of Dolgarian's release, social media erupted. Fighters began sharing stories they had buried for years, stories that revealed a side of the fight game few had dared to admit existed. Vince Morales, a veteran bantamweight, came forward first. He revealed that years ago, someone had offered him $70,000 to throw a fight. For a man whose usual paycheck hovered between $20,000 and $40,000, that wasn't just an offer, it was temptation dressed as salvation. $70,000. For many fighters grinding through training camps, juggling second jobs, and paying their own medical bills, that kind of money isn't corruption, it's survival. Then came others. Vanessa Demopoulos, a strawweight who has publicly shared how she supplements her income through OnlyFans, confirmed she too had been approached. Lando Venata, once seen as a rising lightweight prospect, echoed the same. Mysterious messages, private phone calls, late-night parking lot meetings, all promising money in exchange for silence or surrender. Each story peeled back another layer of the sport's fragile integrity. These weren't whispers anymore. They were confessions, raw, uncomfortable, and damning. And amid all that noise, one voice stood apart. Waldo Cortez Acosta, a surging heavyweight contender, drew a line in the sand. "I wouldn't sell myself for any money," he said, a declaration that cut through the chaos like a clean jab. His words didn't just defend his own name, they exposed the moral divide now splitting the locker room. And when those stories reached Dana White, the reaction was volcanic. The UFC president, part showman, part enforcer, didn't hide behind PR statements. He went on camera with that trademark glare, a mix of fatherly anger and federal-level determination. In his words, he didn't wait for anyone else to take action. Literally, the first thing we did was call the FBI. What came next would turn the scandal into a full-blown federal investigation.
Literally, the first thing we did was call the FBI. So we called the FBI. I've met with the FBI twice today. So that's the whole thing.
He looped in FBI Director Kash Patel, dispatching agents to UFC headquarters for 2 days of tense huddles. And White's message to anyone considering fixing fights was unequivocal.
So, if you try to do this, I've been very vocal and very open about this. We will be your worst enemy. We will immediately go after you, guns a-blazing, with the FBI and whoever else we need to get. And we will do everything we can to make sure you go to prison.
But here's where White's messaging got contradictory. He dismissed rumors of hundreds of rigged bouts as total bullshit, crediting IC 360's vigilance. They'd flagged only about 100 plus alerts in 2025. Yet even as he was downplaying the scope, the damage to public trust was already done. White also expressed frustration with fighters who were now coming forward with stories of being approached by fixers.
Or more importantly, why didn't you tell law enforcement that you were approached? Now you're saying that you were approached? It's like if somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I want you to rob a bank. I'm going to rob banks. Want to rob a bank with me?" And you don't do it. What, you're not gonna tell law enforcement? It's really weird that fighters are coming out now saying they were approached, and they're going to be approached now by the FBI.
And you know what? He had a point. But maybe what's even weirder is asking why fighters wouldn't report these approaches in the first place. Could it be that they didn't trust the system to protect them? Could it be that they feared retaliation? These are questions that cut to the heart of the power dynamics in the sport. This wasn't virgin territory for the UFC. The James Krause saga, where the ex-coach's offshore betting ties tainted Derek Minner's knockout loss to Alexander Hernandez, had already prompted Krause's indefinite USADA suspension and triggered a federal probe. Dolgarian's Factory X affiliation added eerie symmetry, with anonymous sources whispering about lingering networks preying on the desperate. And that's the key word, desperate, because the low-pay nexus was impossible to ignore. Surveys pegged 35% of fighters in debt, with 40% moonlighting in second jobs just to keep their heads above water. We're talking about professional athletes, people who compete at the highest level, driving Ubers between training sessions, teaching kids classes at local gyms, working construction jobs. This isn't how elite athletes in other sports live, and it creates an environment where a $70,000 bribe offer might look less like corruption and more like salvation. On X, the platform erupted. White's clips about the scandal racked up 7,000 plus likes, but scroll through the comments and you'd find an undercurrent of indictment. Peanuts Pay invites this, one thread posited, drawing a direct line between the scandal and base wages that haven't meaningfully budged since 2014. And here's where the analysis gets even more troubling. While everyone focused on fighters potentially throwing fights, some analysts pointed to an even easier target for corruption.
Because look, having a fighter throw a fight is risky, okay? They are in the public limelight. They have to put on a performance. There's a lot that can go wrong there, but you know what would be a lot easier? Just to get the judges or the referees to do it.
White announced a new policy in response. Future betting flags would trigger pre-fight cancellations, but it raised a question. If they had this capability all along, why wasn't it policy before Dolgarian? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.